We understand Bharat as a family, right? The newspaper goes into every home. We understand the pulse of the nation.
In 2018, there were only 45 family offices, and now we're at 300.
$5 billion, which Indian family offices have sort of invested over time into startups in India.
OYO, as they were raising, the entire round is pretty much subscribed by family office. Ek hota hai angel investor.
Yes.
Which is usually an individual investor putting money out of their own pocket and personal
Just
capacity.
above friends, families and fools.
Friends, families and fools. I like that one.
I was trying to do this from Kanpur and nobody in Kanpur I knew even understood what startup investing was, leave alone guide or mentor me. So I had to sort of navigate myself through this whole ecosystem. The next best will come from tier 2, tier 3 cities.
I love that. Welcome, Aarti, to the Bharat Conversation. I'm so excited to have you with us today to talk about family offices, to talk about how do you build from tier 3, tier 4. And before we get into it, I would like to give a brief introduction about you. Aarti is the CIO at Anikarth, the family office for the Jagran Group. And Aarti is based out of Kanpur. So Aarti, you're also heading FICCI's Flow, right?
Yes.
Nationally, and that's a great initiative which is promoting startups for women across the country. So do share a little bit about your journey and how you got into it, and then we'll get started.
So, hi Niharika, wonderful to be here at the Bharat Conversation podcast. I love that there's a podcast dedicated to conversations from Bharat, super amazing. I head the family office for DM Gupta. I belong to the promoter family, and Anikarth Ventures, I'm just going to put out a disclaimer out there, is our angel investing entity, so investing into the private space. So it's part of the family office, but a separate entity. In addition to this, I head startups for Flow, which is Asia's largest women's organization dedicated to women empowerment, and we work a lot towards promoting entrepreneurship, mentoring, and we also work around building and training more women to become angel investors. So that's a few of the multiple hats I wear in addition to being a mom of a teen, which I absolutely love.
That's great. And so even before we get in, I think there's a quick call out to everyone. If you are a female in India right now wanting to understand more about startups and get the support, I think FICCI Flow is a great place to begin with.
Absolutely. There are 20 chapters pan-India. You can reach out to your local city chapter and join. There are tons of programs on entrepreneurship. There's an every yearly boot camp which we do and on training women on how to become investors, and that comes somewhere from a personal journey, because when I wanted to dive into this asset class, there was almost nobody who could because I was trying to do this from Kanpur, and nobody in Kanpur I knew even understood what startup investing was, leave alone guide or mentor me or introduce me to different connects. So I had to sort of navigate myself through this whole ecosystem and make the connects. But so it comes from that space where I want to sort of give them that platform where they can understand angel investing and maybe be part of successful businesses.
Yeah, I think that's fabulous, and I'm so glad that you're doing that. And we're very fortunate to be in a time and space now today where all of these platforms and this support system exist. So thank you for that, Aarti. But before we go ahead further, could you help us understand family offices actually hote kya hai? Because just for everyone out there, the different investors that usually come into a startup, there are these terminologies that exist, right? Ek hota hai angel investor, which is usually an individual investor putting money out of their own pocket and personal
Just
capacity.
above friends, families and fools.
Friends, families and fools. I like that one. Yes, those are the ones you need some fools to back you, right?
So angel investor is just above that fool.
Right. And then you have obviously venture capitalists. We've spoken about that at length, who are professionals dedicated to investing. That is what they do on a full-time basis. Usually taking money from institutional or other investors, and they are the experts. But family offices, I think, is a concept which has come into India or has grown recently. In fact, 2 days back, PwC came out with a report which mentioned that in 2018, there were only 45 family offices, and now we're at 300 and growing. So can you just share a little bit more about that?
So, Niharika, for the longest time in India at least, the way traditionally business or family businesses operated was promoters were earning everything and they were putting back money into the family business, right? There was no separation of family and business.
Okay.
But as times have evolved, there is this transition where businesses are sort of separating the business from the family or the promoter as well, right? And for good reasons, because it avoids a lot of complexities, right? And it brings in a lot of professionalism as well. Promoters are so families are moving from family businesses to business families. Let's put it that way, right? And family offices are helping in this transition. Family office is that home vehicle for a family which sort of takes care of an individual's private wealth and everything around that individual's needs and requirements, right? As an individual gets separated, they build their personal wealth. So it initially starts with taking care of your wealth. It has recently evolved into something far more. So not only are you taking care of the investment needs of a family, but you're also taking care of tax planning, liquidity needs, educating the next gen, philanthropy, succession planning.
Lovely.
So it depends upon how vast you want your family office roles and responsibilities. A family office, personally, in my opinion, has no one structured definition. It can be whatever you as a family want to help transition this generational wealth building process.
Lovely. So what you're saying is that it can have multiple aspects to it. And I think हम जब family office के बारे में सोचते हैं from the venture side, we're only looking at that little sliver, right? Which is the investments into startups, into the ecosystem, or into venture investing. But even in that space, I think in the last few years, we've seen family offices become fairly active. मतलब maybe 5 साल पहले तक इतना हम नहीं सुनते थे. अगर कोई one off कर रहा था तो कर रहा था. Now this whole concept of testing out waters or diversification of your asset class through exposure into startups is gaining traction. For a founder, can you just sort of give perspective as to what is the sort of differentiation between a family office and just, maybe venture capital and angel investing? Like, what will be the pros and cons, or what do they bring to the table?
So yeah, absolutely. You rightly pointed out, right? For most family offices, venture investing is only part of their portfolio. Now, how big or how small that part is totally depends upon the patriarch or the matriarch, right, of the family, or the promoter, right, exactly, or the family's thesis around their whole investment philosophy. But yeah, completely agree with you. Like about 5 years back, there was almost no family offices on cap tables. But today, a lot of deals have family offices on their cap table. I hear some number of around $5 billion, which Indian family offices have sort of invested over time into startups in India. And this number is only expected to sort of grow. So an undeniable force, let's say, put it in terms of venture investing. Just like angel investors are indispensable part, they write that first check. VC funds are an indispensable part of the startup ecosystem. I think family offices are also becoming a very, very formidable force of investing in this ecosystem. In terms of, so I've been an angel investor myself, and we are LPs into VC funds as well. And we invest directly as a family office. So I've actually at some point worn all hats. So I think each one has its own pros and cons. Like, angel investor pretty much writes that first small check. And, if you get that opportunity, you get that very close, personalized, one-on-one from an angel investor sort of thing, guidance. They believe in you much before anybody else sort of does. In terms of VC fund and a family office, what differentiates them personally is the flexibility. Flexibility in terms of timing, right? Both in terms of entry and exit.
So can you just sort of expand on that a little bit more?
So a VC fund normally in India is a 10+1. They've raised funds. If you've raised funds in the next 3 years, you're going to deploy the funds, right? So there's always first, it starts with the pressure to sort of deploy the funds and invest into the startups, right? Family offices have no such pressure. If I feel the whole startup asset class is not the right space to right
Yeah.
now be, I don't have to invest for the next 12, 18 months,
Yeah.
right? Like, so flexibility in terms of entry into whether I want to invest into this asset class or not invest into this
Right.
asset class. At that same time, flexibility on exits, which is the most valuable thing which a family office brings, is patient capital. You know, usually there is no hurry for us to get back that money
Yeah.
if the company is doing well. Right? If there is value being created, I will wait till IPO or even move it to my part of my listed portfolio if the
Yeah.
company is doing well. I don't need to sell that company or
Right.
the shares of that company. And that patient capital is extremely valuable, right? Because which somehow a VC fund does not have the option, because at some point you need to give back
Give
the
back,
capital to your LPs.
Right.
So that is one, flexibility. Flexibility in terms of timing, flexibility in terms of structuring also is available with family office, right? How do I want to structure the deal?
Right.
Like, you know, normally a VC fund has certain parameters defined.
Yeah, it's a template.
Yes, it's a template.
Yeah.
Because, and you cannot sort of really deviate from there,
Yeah.
because that's what you've informed your LPs
That's
and
correct.
raised funds on, right?
Right.
Like, as an LP, I wouldn't want you to deviate, because
Yeah.
I've given you capital based on that template.
Exactly.
But similarly, a family office really does not have to stick to that template. You know, I can be sector agnostic, I can be stage agnostic, I can bring in different instruments of investing, whether
Right.
it's debt, whether it's equity, whether it's a combination of this thing.
Right.
So I think one of the biggest advantages or pros to a family office is the flexibility. Another thing is, you know, you have to really remember, ये वो families है which have built businesses,
Right.
are still either building the biggest businesses of the country or have recently sold off these businesses, right? So, they have a pulse of the nation.
Right.
Like, you know, we understand Bharat as a family, right? Like, you know, the newspaper goes into every home. We understand the pulse of the nation, right? So, it is very helpful to have the right family office on your cap table as well, if they agree to invest into you, right? It can open a lot of doors, but it can bring in a lot of meaningful advice as well, because they're promoters who've built businesses.
I think that's the key part, right? So even in the VC world, in the last, again, 2 years, we've seen this transition to operator VC. जिसने पहले अपना business बना रखा है, वो आपके challenges, वो आपके trials and tribulations, they can understand it better. Similarly, just like what you said, family offices have seen that over generations, and hence I think they don't even have to say their founder first, because they are founders themselves, right? Or they've seen it generationally. I think that sort of friction is not there. In fact, they're sort of batting on from your end. So I think they're great allies to have on your cap table. And just like you said, एक अनलॉकिंग ऑफ पोटेंशियल भी वो बहुत इजीली कर सकते हैं अगर आपका स्ट्रेटेजिक फिट है तो ओपनिंग डोर्स फॉर रेवेन्यू राइट ओपनिंग डिस्ट्रीब्यूशन इन इंडिया द बिग चैलेंज इज डिस्ट्रीब्यूशन even if just to take your family office example, imagine the access or the sort of insights you would be able to bring to the cap table, and that is not something, hence I always feel ke lot of time founders को लगता है पैसा यहाँ से आ रहा है वहाँ से आ रहा है पैसा तो पैसा, it's not that. There is so much. So the color of money is actually different depending on who's bringing it and whether the investor is a passive investor जो कि सिर्फ पैसा दे के भूल जाएंगे या वो एक active investor हैं जो आपको handhold कर सकते हैं, जो आपका revenue unlock कर सकते हैं. And I think that's where the family offices really differentiate immensely.
No, absolutely. And there's the good, bad, ugly in all of these, like, you know, different things. So you need to actually find the right fit, you know, what fits your current company journey.
Right.
That's important, right? So to understand that. And if you understand that, then you've probably cracked it.
Yeah. I used to also think a family officer series B, you know, you put certain thing के A, B तक ही participate करते हैं, उसके बाद गिन चुन के family offices हैं. अभी I was reading कि OYO, as they were raising, the entire round is pretty much subscribed by family offices. I was very taken aback and pleasantly so to look at the quantum of investments that went into this deal. And when the VCs have backed down or backed out for whatever reason from a certain space, the family offices, because of that patient capital, because of the strategic nature of the business and what value they can bring, they were comfortable betting on you.
No, absolutely. I think for family offices, the whole pre-IPO space is very lucrative if it comes at the right valuation. with VCs, it becomes a bit tricky because you don't know when is that exit in play, right? But like I said, the patient capital thing, right? Like, I'll just give you an example. Like, we're investors with NSE, right? Like, it's a solid business. Like, now whether the IPO gets delayed by a couple of years, it's still okay, because at the end of the day, it's a solid business. It's a value generating business. So it's okay. I'm okay to hold that investment. And that's a huge advantage. And similar is the story with OYO as well.
Yeah. If someone is building, because most of the folks sort of hearing us out are building for Bharat, which we say tier 2, tier 3 India and beyond. How do you even begin to reach out to family offices if I am building hypothetically from a Gorakhpur? Right? Where is the right way to identify family offices? Do you think there is a time, space, or platform wherein one can go in and do that outreach? Because what ends up happening is that if you're building, what we've seen is information asymmetry exists, right? So you are not going to end up networking or maybe meeting them so often, which is what happens in the larger cities because of the forums that are created. So there are few platform players, and kudos to them for bringing those startups out early stage, but then it gets very limited. So it's gate kept that way. Do you think there is a way for someone to, any sort of insights, hack that you could sort of talk about there?
I think it's very important for startups to understand when to approach a family office as well. I wouldn't advise approaching very, very early when you need a lot of hands-on support. Like probably a VC fund or can get more operative with the business. But you have to understand that family offices at the end of the day are running their own businesses as well, right? So for them, this is an investment asset class. So while we love to be hands-on, we're not going to build the business for you, right? So when the startup is at least has got some shape or form, right? Like, I don't want to specify the stage, right? But like, you've built to a certain level where in addition to family offices, you've attracted some investment, right? That's the right time to sort of approach when you don't need that very hands-on approach in building your business. In terms of how to access them, I do agree. Personally, even as a family office, we like to be very private. And I know a lot of family offices like to be private as well. But a lot of them who are active in their venture space have their venture arm, either a website, we have our website on with an email address to sort of reach out to, LinkedIn's a great platform to sort of reach out to. And a great thing which is happening in India is a lot of academic institutions, the IITs and the IIMs, are collaborating with family offices.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, so like personally, like we at Anikarth have a tie-up with IIT Kanpur. Like I'm in Kanpur, and IIT Kanpur is my alma mater. Like I'm an alumni of IIT Kanpur, so I've always wanted to work with the startup team there and everything, and I have a blanket statement to them, like I'm available, like in Kanpur, right? Whenever you need me to be there. So a lot of academic institutions are also tying up with family offices. I invested into a startup with this founder who's building. She's from a small town out of Gorakhpur. You mentioned that. I got connected to her because of IIT Kanpur, like
Lovely.
So we've invested in her, and like she's building something absolutely fabulous.
That's so great to hear. So that was something new I learned. I did not know that family offices were sort of working hand in glove with these academic institutions, because it helps. It makes a lot of sense. And honestly, I also feel to a great degree, जो academic institutes होते हैं, उनके through जाने से a lot of founders, right? I feel sometimes get ripped off. Right? There are middlemen or people who say that, let me facilitate this. It's always better to route it through a clean channel. Because then the parties on either side. You can also trust the founder because that basic vetting is done. And similarly, the founder can trust whoever's sitting on the other side as well.
No, absolutely. Like I mean, credible incubators and accelerators are a great deal source for us. Like, a lot of networks, maybe sometimes, we invest as co-investment opportunities with funds and stuff like that. So maybe through a fund route. I would just suggest that, like, even if you do manage to, and I'm going to use your podcast to send out this message, even if you do manage to get a family office or an investor's number, I wouldn't suggest cold calling or cold messaging. There's always a formal way to sort of approach them.
Sure.
And a warm introduction always helps.
Right.
If you can find someone in your network, you know, who can make that introduction, that always helps. So a lot of founders just sort of spray and pray sort of a thing, right?
Yeah.
Without realizing that are we the right fit? Are we not? Like, you know, so do a little bit of homework. And if you sort of can identify with me, like, you know, like, hey, I'm reaching out to you because I read this particular thing. Even if I'm not interested in investing, I'm at least going to give you a year.
And what it makes you feel is the other person has put in effort.
Yes.
To understand what is the fit. I totally, you know, second that, because I'm going to just piggyback on it. Like, even to any other investor also, please don't send those standard. I've got messages which says, "Dear sir."
I think I get once a week a "Dear sir" message. I've got messages saying "Dear" and some other name.
Yeah.
Right? Like, so you know, like, I'm not going to look beyond that, right? So put in some effort into when you're reaching out to investor, because you're not going to get the next meeting if you do that. Like, you know, that's the most important. That's
First impression, right?
Yes, yes. I think I would have missed on so many good deals also because of just the simple wrong way people have approached, right? Like, there's some basic etiquettes which everyone should follow.
Yeah, I agree. And I also feel while there's a thin line के थोड़ा सा आपको persistent रहना है, but you cannot make it uncomfortable. There cannot be a sense of entitlement, you know. Like, sometimes saying, if you can't do this, at least I've got those messages as well. Like, okay, you know. But I totally hear you. So I think it's so important that you communicate and understand that, you know, you're asking or requesting for someone's time and attention. So just sort of approach it with that courtesy. That would be great. So, you know, one interesting fact that I read about family offices, and I would love to get your take on it, is that fintech is a sector of apparently a lot of love and choice for family offices. And this was just very interesting to me. Is there a particular reason for it, or is it just so happened?
I'm just trying to mentally like plot our this thing. We do have fintech investments, but no special affinity towards it. Maybe there was a boom into fintech, right? Like, while India needed what it needed, and a lot of family offices were also sort of starting to invest at that point.
Okay.
I think that could just be a coincidental thing. But I think it also could be because, you know, you sort of, as a family office, investing, and you're really very closely dealing with money and like everything related to it, so you understand the nitty-gritties.
Yeah, that could be.
Yes. So, you know, whether it is investing platform like Grow, or like, you know, or a payment facilitator, or anything of that sort, right? You sort of understand the need for this, and that's why the love for it as well. But I think a lot of it had to do with the timing of the fintech boom and the family office boom.
Yeah. Oh, very interesting. Because even when I read it, I said, interesting insight. Maybe there's something that I'm, wanting to understand.
Yeah, and if there's something else, like if something I'm missing, like happy to sort of know more about it. But no special love for fintech from us, at least, like, you know.
Right. One thing I wanted to touch upon was sometimes the perception is that a family office only comes in for strategic acquisitions. Like, typically that the end game is going to be that, or like you mentioned, IPO. Do you think that's a biased view, or, you know, it's that the only, or is there truth to that?
I think it's a biased view, honestly. Like, you know, I don't, we are not looking to invest into venture from an acquisition point of view. If there is, I can tell how we work, right? If there is something which is of business interest, there's an entirely different team which looks at it from a business interest. But otherwise, we're in it to sort of explore this asset class and provide our learnings and handhold a founder and make money out of it, like, you know. So maybe there are acquisitions in that with certain family offices, and that's not a bad deal either, right? So if you have a strategic investor on board, and I know a lot of founders invite certain family offices to be on the table so that they can be strategic buyouts in future, right? So the company sort of seen the journey, and they feel comfortable. They're comfortable with the founder because they later themselves invite the founder to head that division after the acquisition as well, right? So a lot of founders invite families to come in as strategic investors
Right.
with the bait that, this could be a possible acquisition. And that's not a bad strategy, right? You
I
shouldn't
agree.
be, as a founder, you shouldn't be scared of that.
Hmm.
But if that's something which you don't want, then don't go for that same business aligned interest family office.
Yeah.
Right? Like, so someone, for example, if they're in the consumer space as a family, right? If they're investing in a health tech startup, then there's really no acquisition
chance
play
nahi
over
kaise
there,
hoga.
right?
Right.
Like, so if you don't want the acquisition play, then don't pitch to a consumer brand if you are a consumer founder.
Also, I think another way that I have seen that's worked for some of our startups is when you want a particular family office and for whatever reason, maybe the scale is too small, abhi deal mein nahi aana chahte hain,
Yeah.
it's not working out. A nice way to test it out is have them do like a POC or actually do business with them.
Yeah.
That also becomes
Yes.
like a first level of interaction and then the doors open, right?
Yeah.
So maybe if not in that round, in the next round, once they are comfortable, once they've seen the product, tested it, tasted
Yeah.
it, that becomes like a nice part. Like you just said, it's about getting to know and it's a
Yeah.
longer journey than you just...
We actually did that with one of the startups
Okay.
where we sort of had one of our group companies use them and
Yeah.
like, actually get the feedback and stuff like that.
Right.
And even existing portfolio companies, right?
Huh.
You sort of get a first-hand review about what are the gaps in the business or within your network, like of known promoters, right? You sort of suggest this company and the
Right.
kind of feedback you get. So we've done that, yeah. So
And
that's a good way to sort of make inroads as well.
Great. So, how do you see the Indian family office? And I'm going to keep it specific to venture investing because that's sort of more, where we'd like to focus on. So, India mein jaise family office maturity ho rahi hai in the, environmentally, compared to what's been going on internationally, do you see like us going on a similar path or do you think that the Indian family office system is slightly different?
See, at the end of the day, family offices are here to make money, right? Like, and worldwide also, internationally
Right.
also. At the end of the day, with its maximum return with minimum risk, right?
Right.
Leaving aside all the family goals and everything, once that basic is sorted out. In terms of like asset class, I think venture investing is pretty matured for family offices. A lot of family offices are looking at it. A lot of family offices have also sort of understood how to navigate themselves through this.
Yeah.
And while there are some who have burnt their hands with the initial play, with the next gen just coming in,
Yeah.
just thinking that I'm going to put in huge sums of
Yeah.
money like into the space and make money, they've burnt their hands and sort of withdrawn a little.
Okay.
There are enough number of family offices who are very excited about this asset class. We are very excited about this asset
That's
class. I
great.
think in terms of startups, we are yet to see the best of them come. The next best will come from tier 2, tier 3 cities.
I love that.
Yeah.
I am so glad to hear both those things. One, the best is yet to
Yeah.
come, and coming from tier 2, tier 3, because I really do feel, at least in India, both the, I would say, founder mindset or the to be founder mindsets of folks in tier 2, tier 3 has matured a lot. There's a lot of
Yeah.
buoyancy, confidence hai, comfort hai, like you said, with government incubation centers, educational institutes, even at a state level. Aapne UP ki baat ki, whether it's MP, UP, Assam, I've worked a bit there. Everybody's promoting it, and with that infrastructure and resources is where you're at. तो आपको कहीं चीज छोड़ के एक तो जाने की जरूरत नहीं है. You can build from there. The numbers actually work better. It's cheaper. And the consumption demographic is also now transitioning. Tier 2, tier 3 ka consumption patterns are so heightened. I'm talking to venture capital firms or funds now are specifically trying to develop a Bharat thesis, Bharat consumption thesis.
Yes.
So I think it's very interesting.
Yeah. I mean, I do want to give a disclaimer that the Bharat thesis is not matured yet. There's still trials and errors going on, but yeah, that story is yet to play.
Yeah. So I think good, because as we're seeing the other, I think to some degree, tier 1 saturation or tier 1 certain demographic, right? That is fairly saturated and it's fairly fickle now. I do feel that, yeah, it's the next 10 years or 15 years, you will see that consumption pattern mature a little bit. And also like I said, the startup, there's one dear friend who's building, I love that he decided to build out of Dehradun like 3-4 years back, and a fairly large company now, Spandan.
Yeah.
They're in the health tech space.
I know we heard the thing. I think he's doing something fantastic.
Yes.
I heard their pitch.
Oh, really? Yeah, he's a great guy, great sort of vision and great like outcome as well. But decided clearly that I'm not going to move. मैं यहीं से build करूँगा. So in Uttarakhand, and like I said, the numbers actually work for them. So they have a great captive team, which they're not dealing with attrition, which is a challenge in the larger cities, and doing.
They're building it cheap.
They're building it cheap.
Yes.
They're
building ignore that.
Why not?
Yeah,
right?
like from office space to talent to everything, right?
Yeah.
You're building it cheap, and that's what the ecosystem demands as well, right? Nobody's writing you big checks for growth capital and to burn money anymore, right?
Absolutely.
Founders have also had to sort of wrap their head around this whole thinking that there is no free lunches anymore.
Yeah, I'm so glad. I think the time has come for that.
Yes.
So I just, before we sort of wrap up, touch a little bit upon, because I know you feel obviously very, very strongly about it, the gender aspect of it. Do you see now in India more women getting into the family office roles or the investment roles?
I mean, I do see some, not enough.
Okay.
Like, there's always scope for more.
Right.
So I highly encourage every woman to be part of their family office, from the family at least, right? Like I'm speaking purely as from the family, right? And not as a professional. Professional, yes, more than welcome to do that. But women have been in finance and investment space for a long time.
Right.
But from the family, because you are 50% of the family.
Right.
So if you don't contribute your views and your knowledge to the family office, then it's incomplete, because the family's views are not out there. The goals and aspirations are incomplete then, so I think we at our family office really encourage all members of the family to sort of contribute and at least understand what is happening. And honestly, I've always said this, a woman, especially a daughter-in-law, has the best interest of the family in mind, right? Because, and of the wealth of the family, because if it has to be intergenerational, then it's her offsprings
that are going to
inherit. And mothers, how they are about their children, right?
Want only the best.
Yes, and so who else would want the best for that money, or who else would be a better custodian of that money than the woman?
That is such a beautiful thought. Very, very interesting perspective. And I think that's fabulously put. So in family offices, I'm just curious, typically in an IC, do you see most family members participate actively, or the structures differ?
The structures differ. I think in most family offices, there's sort of an overall thesis in the mandate, and there is regular updates and sort of this thing, but you have certain specific members of the family looking after the money.
Yeah, leading that conversation. And just for everyone there, IC is the investment committee. तो जो लोग startups को देख के ये decide करेंगे कि does it fit the mandate, what are the contours financially, does this make sense? So that's called the investment committee. But
and it's a mix of both professional as well as family members, right?
Yeah.
Like I just want to put it out there. Like a lot of families are now having external professional people on their IC,
subject matter experts also, right? Sometimes who come in.
Absolutely, that's an external opinion you can see, but even on your IC, like you invite advisors and IC committee members who are not part of your family.
Right. So great. Thank you so much, Aarti, for giving the time and the views and the candid conversation. I'm so glad you could be part of the Bharat Conversation. And shout out to anyone, like we said, if you're building for Bharat and from Bharat, and if you're a female looking to start investing, I think FICCI Flow is a great place to reach out, and Family Office is a great co-investor and ally.
Super. Thank you so much, Niharika. The pleasure's been all mine, and thank you for doing this conversation.
Thank you.